So the title that I have given this training is the Local Church Clerk, a ministry of data, people, and mission. And so I don't know if you have ever wondered how important is my role as a church clerk in my local church. Putting it from another perspective, have you ever realized that the ministry of the local church clerk, if you were to ask me today, is a very, and I'm going to underscore and highlight, very important ministry in the church? Well, I'm not the only one that says this. Look at the church manual, page 81. To me, this is an eye-opening statement. And it reads, much of the efficient functioning of the church depends on the work of the clerk. How much? It says much of the efficient functioning of the church depends on the work of the clerk. This statement from the church manual makes two assumptions. The first one, the church should have efficient functioning. The church should be organized, should be a well-oiled machine, efficient functioning. That's one assumption. The second assumption I get from this statement out of the church manual is that much of this efficient functioning depends on the work of you, the church clerk. So as I begin this seminar, again, I want to underscore how important each one of you are, not just to the Texas conference, but more specific to your local church, to the efficient functioning of your local church. Let's see what else the church manual says regarding your ministry as a local church clerk. So here's the entire passage. Much of the efficient functioning of the church depends on the work of the clerk. Now notice what else it says. Because of the important and specialized functions of this office, it is wise to choose one who can be re-elected to provide continuity in record keeping and reporting. Large churches may elect assistant clerks as needed. Notice that this second part of the church manual statement says that the responsibilities of the church clerk are not only important, but are specialized functions. And for these reasons, the fact that your ministry is a specialized ministry, notice that the church manual makes two important recommendations in this section. It says the church clerks should be allowed to serve a longer period. There it says can be re-elected to provide continuity in record keeping and reporting. If you ask me what my interpretation is of this continuity, this re-election, I would say to you that at least because of the specialized functions, the ministry that you serve or you provide for your local church, any local church clerk should be in ministry at least 3 years, because sometimes it takes a while to learn the specialized functions, to learn everything out there that there is to learn, so that you can do a good ministry. And so if you are changing church clerks every year, even every 2 years, it takes time to learn what those specialized functions are, especially now with E-Adventist, part of the ministry of the local church clerk. It's not easy to anticipate it in 1 year. I'm going to be an efficient local church clerk. For that reason, the recommendation of a longer period, and the assistant clerks, or that it is mentioned here. It's a good practice, and this should not apply just to large churches. Any church, in my estimation, should have an assistant church clerk, so he or she can help with this specialized functions that we are responsible for. So let's review what some of those specialized functions are. Let's take a closer look at this. One of them is record keeping. And many of you already know this because you manage agendas, you deal with minutes, you deal with membership record. This is where E-Adventist comes in. It used to be paper record, put it on the mail, received letters. Now it's all digital. It's all online. It's E-Adventist at its best. Well, that is a specialized function that a local church clerk needs to master. Historical records, record keeping of historical records, and we'll come back to some of that in a moment, etc. Reporting, and this is E-Adventist again, baptisms, professions of faith, membership transfers, data on membership growth. Again, this is all E-Adventist. It's a specialized function. So let's talk for a moment about record keeping. Record keeping are agendas. Record keeping are minutes. Record keeping is the membership record that we alluded to already. Record keeping talks about historical events. Which of this would you say is the most important record keeping for the church? And I know I cannot hear you, but if you can add to the chat your answer, one or two or three of you, which of these items do you feel is the most important when it comes to record keeping? Do I have any answers in the chat? And I can read those. So anybody ventures with an answer? Is it the agendas for the church board or the church in business session, the minutes for both of these meetings, membership record, historical events? Karen, you're suggesting the membership, the minutes. Terry is suggesting the membership record. Thank you, Clara, you're saying minutes. Well, let's stop there. Minutes is the most important piece of record keeping that a church clerk ought to pay the most attention to. The minutes. It's the official record of the life of the church. And yes, those of you who answered the membership record, that's also very important. Probably it goes next, at the same level as minutes, because it's the membership record, whether it's family information, whether it's addresses, whether it's contact information, etc. Very important piece of record keeping. But one that I think stands out the most is minutes, because again, it's the official record. It's the life of the church. And for that reason, minutes should be safeguarded, if possible, for the entire life of the church. Let me just say, historical events, it's also very important. Your church from time to time celebrates an organization. Let's say it celebrated becoming a company. That's a historical event in the life of the church, when the church was organized as a church. That's a historical event. Sometimes we do special programs. Sometimes there's news that come on the local news of your city, and any type of record like that is is very important. Sometimes your church is celebrating 25 years anniversary, 50, 100-year anniversary, and there's a big celebration, and there are news here and there. Those are historical events. That's historical records that you as a church clerk, ought to pay attention to and save for future reference. But again, minutes is the life of the church, and in my estimation, the most important record that you ought to keep. So let me just walk you through real quickly. Let me review a set of minutes, and I'm going to use minutes from the last organization that I worked for before coming to the North American division, and I'll give you a Zoom version of this, and in terms of where you can see a much larger print. But this is a sample. It's the first of 3 pages of a set of minutes, and you will notice that it's the executive committee minutes of the Arizona Conference Corporation, where I served as the executive secretary for a few years. So I'm going to share this with you. I'm going to walk you through some of the most important components of the minutes. So here we go, a little closer look. The first thing that we must have is the name of the organization. In your case, it would be the Keene Church, or the Burlington Church, or whatever the name of the community you are located in, of Seventh-day Adventists. Then the next piece is the church board, if that's how you refer to the church board minutes. Church board minutes, the date and the time. Very important to have those pieces of information on your set of minutes. Then the next piece that is very, very important, you add, you should have the members present for that meeting. Only those members that were present. It's good to list them. And I can give you the reasons for that. If you have questions on some of these recommendations, just save them for at the end, and I'll be happy to answer questions. But it's very important to list who were present at that church board when they took whatever action. Very important to have the list of those present. But it's also important to list members absent, and there are 2 types of members absent. One are what I would call excused absence and unexcused absence. I think the record, the minutes, should reflect those individuals that took the time to let you as a church clerk know that you could not make this church board meeting. I think it's good when people do that, and very important. It shows that you are responsible. And so it's good to include the excused absences. But it's also good to have a list on the minutes showing the unexcused, not because we want to shame anybody, but I think sometimes nominating committee wants to know what members of the church are responsible. What members of the church, took serious the fact that they were part of the church board. Were they present or not? How many times they just didn't show up during a year's worth of board meetings? I think that's important information that can help for some of the scenarios that I just shared with you. I can tell you that at least in the Arizona Conference, and many other institutions or organizations, we list members absent and the unexcused, excused and unexcused for those reasons. Legal counsel strongly recommends that the agenda for that meeting be voted at the beginning of the meeting, and that is the item at the very bottom of this sample minutes. Noted that it says agenda approval. If you want to include who had the devotional, the chair usually does the welcome to the committee members, etc. The first item of business of a church board should be the agenda approval. And again, this is a recommendation from legal counsel, and they strongly recommend this at the beginning of the meeting, because once the agenda is voted, no other items should be added to the meeting. And there are reasons for that. And like I said, if anybody has a question on that matter, just feel free to add it to the chat at the end of the presentation. But it's very important, again, that we include some of these components for the minutes of your local church board. This second part of the minutes, still part of page 1, just enlarged. Minutes should record church actions, or if I put it in a different way, you only need to capture voted items on the minutes. I'm showing you again an example from the Arizona conference here. You will notice on the left-hand side of this sample minutes, you list the agenda items. Again, the minutes should follow the agenda, and I'll give you a sample copy of an agenda at the end. Let's take, for example, the second item there, conference membership activity. That is the item on the agenda. And once the report by the secretary of the conference, in this particular case, it was me, I presented this conference membership activity report to the committee members. Someone moved to be approved, someone seconded. If there were any questions, I answered questions that they had, and then the chair called for a vote. And once it was voted, my job was to record the approval of the item on the left. Again, only capture voted items. No need to add editorial comments. Why am I saying this? Because I have come across some churches that the minutes look more like books, because there's, on one voted item, there's sometimes half a page or almost a full page of comments. Brother so-and-so made the motion. Sister so-and-so seconded. Sister Smith made the following observation, and the clerk, tries to capture, as much as they can with the comments, etc. There's no need to add anything else other than the voted action on the minutes. And the reason for this is because minutes should record only the actions of the church. Was this item voted, yes or no, period. Minutes should never reflect names. Brother Smith, Sister Jones, no, none of that should be in the minutes, because minutes are the legal records of the actions of the church, and they can expose the church and the leadership of the church to potential litigation, especially when we start adding the type of comments church board members make in favor or sometimes against the item. There's no need for that. That all of that does not matter. What matters at the end of the day, was the item voted, approved, or was the item not voted, not approved? And that's what you need to record on the minutes. It's also a good practice to number your voted items, as I'm showing you here in this sample on the far left side of this document that you see again, going back to the sample I gave you, 2021 vacation carryover requests. That is the item, the agenda item that needed approval. Below that, you will see EC space 22-005. It's a good practice, again, to number your voted items. EC stands in this particular set of minutes for the executive committee. And then 22 is the year. And then the -006 is the voted item. We were starting this meeting in January, and that's why you see 003, 4, 5, etc. And then you carry on with the same sequence of numbering for that 22 year till the end of the year. And then in 23, we started with 230001. This year should be 24, and so forth and so forth. It's good practice to number your voted items for reference and indexing purposes. That's always a good practice for record keeping. Here's another portion of those set of minutes, just to give you an idea what those sets of minutes look like. Again, notice the agenda item on the left, the numbering of the item, and the voted action as clean as possible. Voted to accept, voted to invite, voted, etc., etc. And even when there's a tough item that may take an hour of discussion and there's a lot of push back and forth, at the end of the day, the chair will call for a vote, and the vote either passes, and that's what you record. Voted to purchase the property located at such and such address, period. You don't record 20 members voted in favor, 10 voted against. You don't record the voting. You just record either the vote passed or the vote did not pass. Those are clean sets of minutes according to legal counsel that we should record for recording purposes. Then one more sample here. I want to point out at the bottom of this sample minutes, notice the executive session. Sometimes your church board may enter into an executive session. Executive session means that only voting members are allowed, should be privileged privy to that discussion. If you have guests, invitees, guests, or other people in the meeting, they should be excused at that moment, because now you're about to deal with a private matter, a personal matter, pressing matter, or whatever you want to call it, that requires only the voting members to be present. That's what we refer to as executive session. And you should have a separate set of minutes for that portion of the meeting. And usually it's only 1 or 2 items. And so your minutes for that are going to be very small, because again, you only deal with a few items from time to time. But you got to have a separate set of minutes for the executive session. And that's very important. Then finally, this is the end of the sample minutes. It's good to record, when the meeting ended. I followed that practice for the for the Arizona conference when I was the executive secretary there. It's good to vote to adjourn. It's a good practice. You don't have to do it. I chose to record it because I follow strictly what I've learned from what I recall professional people when it comes to minute taking. And so I just chose to follow their advice for either the conference, and now I'm recommending some of this for your local church as well. And then it's good to sign the minutes. Once you bring minutes to your church board, they review them and they approve them before you archive them or index them. It's good for you as the secretary to sign. And in some places, the president or the chair, board chair, also signs the minutes. So those are witnessing signatures that the minutes have been approved. They're the official record for that meeting. And now you can archive them and have them ready to, whenever people want copies of the minutes, then you can provide the official minutes, which should carry the signature. It's a good practice to carry. So how to share regular church board minutes for approval? 1 week ahead of the meeting, it's a good practice via email. I know that in some places, not every church board member may have access to an email, although in today's world, it's hard to believe, but there are cases. And so if your church board cannot handle electronic communication like email, then the option left is during the meeting. During the meeting, whether you share paper copies for board members, or you choose to put the minutes on the screen, that's also an acceptable way. You can show the minutes on the screen if you have a projector for that meeting, so you don't, we don't kill too many trees out there. Present the minutes on the screen. Give the committee members a couple minutes to read them, or again via email, or if it comes to that, during with paper copies during the meeting. How to share executive session church board minutes for approval. These are sensitive minutes depending on the topics or the items that were discussed at an executive session, and so I would not advise that you send this by email, because you want to protect the privacy of the executive session board minutes. So the recommendation is to either project the sets of minutes on video projection during the meeting, or if you bring paper copies, distribute the paper copies so that the church board members read the executive session minutes, but you must collect those minutes. You must collect. They're not for the board member to take home. You collect the set of minutes. It's good for them to initial the minutes or sign the minutes, so that there will be evidence that the board reviewed them, and Sister Jones reviewed the minutes. Here are her initials, her signature. You collect those sets of minutes, and you secure them, or ensure the confidentiality by doing that. Again, if you're doing a Zoom meeting, which more and more we're holding board meetings by Zoom, then you can show, as I'm doing today, the documentation for others to see on their screen without having to give them copies of it. You read, you approve, then you move on. Record keeping. Let me just say a quick word on record keeping. I know the time, I'm not sure how much time I have, but I'll let our coordinator maybe put on the chat whenever I have 10 minutes or less to go. And then 10 minutes, 5 minutes?
Actually, it's 13 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes.
Okay, and then we'll entertain questions. So record keeping. Record keeping is a very important piece of securing records for the church. These are some of the records that we are required to, let me go back, to retain. Agendas, approval of minutes, membership records. Praise God that you don't have to worry about membership records, because they're all part of E-Adventist. And so with you and your church, with your church having an account with E-Adventist, and you managing everything that has to do with membership via E-Adventist, that record is being secured for you already, for your church. All you do is you manage E-Adventist, you manage membership records by reporting baptisms, by reporting the transfers, as you do with E-Adventist, by doing everything else that E-Adventist requires you to do, updating records, etc., etc. List of your church officers. E-Adventist gives you that capability, so that you can enter who's the pastor, who's your head elder now, your clerk, your treasurer, Sabbath school director, everything. Every time there are changes in leadership, you can enter those, you can update your own records for your church via E-Adventist, and those records are secured in terms of record keeping. You don't have to save those. But agendas, approval of minutes, retention of historical events, yes, those things you are going to have to find a safe way of providing, of record keeping these items. How to store? Well, recommendations are hard copy. Obviously, is the the way we've been doing that. Digital format, if you're able to digitize some of those records or microform them, you have a safe way of recording or keeping those items safely. Where to store the church records? Well, if you're doing it by hard copy or digital form in the computer, church office, a safe place. But with today's technology, the cloud, that's probably the best, the safest way, especially if the church is paying for cloud storage through whatever internet provider that you have. Usually providers that sell cloud space are secure places, and they guarantee the records that you store there. But anyway, these are just different ways of safeguarding the church records that you may have. Now, how long? Minutes, agendas, historical events, I would say, if possible, for the life of the church. Membership records that are stored through e-Adventist, they will be there for the life of the church. Sometimes a church closes because of lack of membership, because of lack of growth, and so sometimes a church chooses to close. Whenever a church closes, the recommendation is for those records that you have saved throughout the many years of the church's existence, is for you to send those records to the conference, whether they're membership records, whether it's financial records. The conference, local conference, should continue to safeguard those documents, those records, for future reference should someone one day wants to learn about something that happened with that church in a particular year. You don't destroy the records, you pass them on to the parent organization. In this case is the conference, and they will continue if the church closes. But if the church continues to exist, it is the responsibility of the church clerk to make sure that those records are retained, those records are saved in the proper way. So here is a sample of a North American division working policy. This is a policy known as BA 7010, and it deals with records retention. It gives guidance, it gives information, not just for the local conference, the unions, but also the local church, as to the best way of record keeping or retaining your church records. Let me say that sometimes the local conference has a retention of records policy already voted locally. The reason why some conferences do this is because they are bound by the local and state requirements, or state laws, rather. So local and state laws sometimes guide the retention of records. And so if your local conference has a policy in place that gives guidance, you gotta refer to that policy. All you gotta do is ask your executive secretary of your local conference to see if they have a voted policy on how to do records retention, and that would be the document that you are bound by. This is a North American division guidance. If the conference doesn't have any voted guidelines, then the conference and the union would always refer to the North American division policy for guidance in terms of records retention. And this presentation is being recorded, and I understand you can have access to that you're welcome to go back and review the slides and read this policy in detail. Here's the second part of the policy. It talks about documents and files, plan giving and trust services program. This is more conference level. Human resource records, that's conference level, etc. But so anyway, so this is there for, again, for information for you to have in case you have a question on the retention of local church records. Let me end by sharing with you a sample agenda. I talked about the importance of minutes and safeguarding of minutes. Agendas are part of the minutes. My practice when I was a local church clerk, even when I was a conference clerk as an administrator there, I always save the agenda and the minutes together, because the agenda is the face of the minutes, and vice versa. The minutes follow the agenda, and in the order that the agenda was voted. Sometimes the chair can choose to deal with an item in a different particular order, and that is the privilege of the chair if he or she wants to change the order of the agenda. But once the agenda is voted at the beginning of the meeting, that is the agenda that must be reflected in the minutes. So here's a sample, and again, this is an agenda from the North American Division Committee for Administration. As the Undersecretary of the North American Division, I have the privilege of chairing many committees and also serving as the secretary for many committees. This is one committee that I serve as the secretary for that committee, so it's my responsibility to put the agenda together, share it with the chair before the meeting, and once the chair gives the okay that the agenda is ready to go, then I send the agenda to the committee members so they can be prepared for the meeting. Notice this is a meeting that took place this month, just a few days ago, May 8, 2024, NATCOA. NATCOA stands for North American Division Committee for Administration. And we have many committees at the division level. And so it's much easier to learn the names of the committee by acronyms. So that's why NATCOA is a well-known term that we all know. And that's why you see me included in the minutes. Notice that on the left-hand side, this particular agenda has a presenter. And since the committee members sometimes come from different departments of the division, we elected to have the initials of who is going to present that item in that meeting. So in this particular case, you see my initials there multiple times, JAR, that's me, Jorge Angel Ramírez. And so I present those items before the committee, and there's other presenters that you'll see their initials under presenter. Then sequence number is the order of the committee. And again, we do it just to facilitate not only the record keeping of the minutes, but also the order of the meeting. So the minutes come in as the third item on the agenda, independent transfers is the fourth item, and so forth. The administration year number, again, for recording and indexing purposes, we put the year, even though the year is on top of the minutes, above on the minutes, we put the year before the agenda item. And then right in the middle, you see the agenda item, call to order, prayer, minutes, independent transfers, division status, facilities use requests. And so that's the agenda. Very simple, to the point. You don't have to do it as I'm showing you here with presenter initials. For us, it's simple because the chair can look at the initial and say, okay, Jorge, walk us through the minutes. He can look at RR, which is Rick Remmers. He's the assistant to the president. He is in charge of facilities use requests. You can look at the agenda and refer to him by name. You know, walk us through the facilities use request. What do you have for us to consider, and so forth. It's just to facilitate order and efficiency for the chair to deal with the minutes. Anyway, this is the agenda, a sample of an agenda. It's not as crucial. This is not as crucial as the minutes. So you as local church clerks can, play around with a format that works for you as far as the agenda. But it's very important to have the items that you're gonna present for the committee. If you want numbers for the order of the items, it's very important, and that is what your meeting should look like. That is my presentation at this point. I understand that this is now a time for Q&A, and I will be happy to let David coordinate that section with you on the chat.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. This has been an outstanding and informative presentation. So again, we thank you for sharing with us in such a thorough manner. I have about 6 questions here. I'm not sure if we'll have time for all of them. In case we do not have time for them, I'm going to ask that additional questions go ahead and email those questions to questions@txsda.org. Questions@txsda.org. I'll actually put that information in the chat box while Dr. Ramirez is answering the questions that I'll share with him. So our first question is, Dr. Ramirez, how many official readings in the church should be done when we transfer in or out a member?
Yes, that's a very good question and easy to answer. When you as a clerk are bringing a name before the entire church body for either acceptance into membership of your church or transferring outside your church, there are usually 2 readings. One is again information. It gives time for the church to know that Brother Smith is coming into your church by way of transferring from whatever the church is to your church, or for Sister Jones, who's a member of your church, is desiring to transfer out of your church to another church. It gives you time to gives the local church time to know the information, and then the second reading is usually the time when the vote is taken. So again, the recommendation is 1 reading and then the second reading at the time of the vote when it's taken.
Okay, second question. How many official, what do we do when we do not have the exact deceased date of a church member? What do we do when we do not have the exact deceased date of a church member?
Yes, and we usually deal with several instances of that. Sometimes it's the family not wanting to provide the date for whatever reason. I personally, I don't understand why they would not provide the information, but sometimes the information is not there. So whatever information you have, sometimes you have a month and a year, sometimes you have a month and a day, but no year. Sometimes the only information you are given is a year. Whatever information you are given, you include that information. Now, that is for information is going to be incomplete on church records, because if somebody ever wants to know again when Brother so-and-so passed away, they're never going to know if the date is not complete. And again, sometimes the question comes up for different reasons, So it's best if we, as much as possible, try to get the accurate, exact, completed date. But when you don't have what you need, you put what you have, and sometimes you don't have nothing. And so there's nothing for you to add or put unless they give you the information.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. We have another question. You mentioned about not having names on board agendas, but what about motions that are made and who second those motions? Should those names be added?
Yes, again, the legal counsel strongly recommends against putting names on minutes in terms of the discussion, even the motions and the second, those are irrelevant. There's no need to have any of that information because what really matters is what action was taken. You could have a discussion for 2 hours on one topic, and you can have multiple names of people that spoke in favor of the item or against the item. And sometimes the comments can show angry or anger comments or the disappointment comment, whatever. No matter what you read, you can have any of that on record. At the end of the day, what's going to matter is, did the item passed? Was the item voted? Or was the item voted down? And that's the only thing that matters for the church, for the record, for anything. Nothing else is going to matter because it doesn't matter what people say, how people say it, how many people said it. It's the action, the final action that was taken that matters. And that's why legal counsel strongly recommends be clean, be straight to the point on your minutes. Don't struggle trying to capture every detail. There's no need for it. It's irrelevant. What matters is, did the vote pass? Did the vote not pass? That's what should be recorded.
Okay. Do minutes need to be sent to the conference office?
The short answer is yes. This is done every time the auditors come calling on you through the conference. And the minutes, again, are going to be there to reflect all the actions that were taken by the local church, especially actions that deal with membership, actions that deal with finances, actions that deal with purchasing of equipment, things, etc. The finances, the record of finances should match the minutes. And that's why the auditors will come and require minutes, financial statements every 1 or 2 years, whenever the auditing happens in your local church. And this is good practice because it protects your pastor, protects you as a clerk, protects the church treasurer, protects anybody that handles money in the church, anybody that is part of the administrative part of the church. You as a local church clerk, I said at the beginning, you are a very important part of ministry in your local church because you are an administrator. You handle a lot of administrative items for your church. Therefore, the minutes are the record of what happens in the church. And so, yes, they will be asked for copies.
Does the pastor do the agenda for the meeting?
The agenda should be done by the clerk in consultation with the pastor. The pastor usually serves as the chair of the church board. In some large churches, sometimes the church elects a lay member to be the church board, and that's acceptable according to the church manual. But the church manual recommends that the pastor should be the president or the chair of the board. When the pastor is the president or chair of the board, he should not be involved in putting the agenda together because he should not be doing the work of two administrators. The clerk is the administrator for the church, responsible for the minutes, responsible for the agenda. But yes, you work in collaboration with your church pastor. He may give you the items for the agenda that he's collecting. Sometimes the items for the agenda can come through you as well, and then you share. Whenever you feel you have your agenda completed, you and the pastor should review it because he's the chair. And once he gives the okay for the agenda, then at that point you can share the agenda ahead of the meeting.
Okay. Is it normal that the members in the church board take the votes? And how many people voted, who is absent or present on the church board, and what is voted or what is not voted, or not if they are not the secretary? Did I say that clear enough for you, Doctor?
One more time.
Let me do that again. There we go. Regarding the minutes that are taken during the church board, is it normal that the members in the church board take the votes? And how many people, example is how many people voted as far as who is absent, who is present on the board, and what is voted or not voted if they are not the secretary?
I'm going to see if I understood the question correctly. Minutes, as I suggested, should reflect who's present, who's absent. Other than that record, when it comes to a vote, the chair will call a vote. Let's say that your church had been arguing for 2 hours in your church board whether to buy another property for the church to move to that property, and you have members in favor of that, and you have members strongly opposed to move the church from the present location. So you struggle with 2-hour discussion. But at the end of the day, the discussion comes to an end, and the church board, the chairman of the board says, okay, all those in favor say aye or nay. So the minutes are going to show at that point 22 members voted in favor of purchasing and 5 voted not to purchase. So when you count the votes, who in favor, who against, if you have the majority voting in favor, the action means that it passed. So the minutes are going to reflect voted to purchase the property located at this address, period. That's it. That's your record. Those are the minutes. There's no need to put 29 voted in favor, 10 voted against. There's no need for editorials. There's no need for any additional information that is meaningless. The vote passed. Even if it passed by simple majority, which is 50 plus 1, it passed. It passed. We will move on. You should move on with the voted action, and the minutes should reflect the item passed. If it did not pass, then it should voted not to purchase the property located at. It means you're not moving, you're not buying it. The vote did not pass. It doesn't matter how many in favor, how many against, or recording the name of the people that voted. All of that is unimportant. It's basically at the end of the day, when the chair calls for the vote, did the item pass? Yes or no? That's what is reflected or should be reflected in the minutes.
Does eAdventist have a feature to send the minutes to the conference, or how do we send the minutes to the conference?
I believe, and I may be wrong on this, and I can't look into it. And if I'm wrong with the answer I'm going to give you, I can always email the Texas Conference Secretariat and give them the right answer, and they can pass it on to each one of you. But I do not think the current eAdventist software has the option to email minutes, and this is the reason why. The only time when minutes are needed at the conference level is when an auditing is happening. Other than that, there's no other reason to send minutes or financial records from a local church to the conference. The only time when these 2 items, financial records and church board minutes, are required is when the auditors come calling in through the conference, and Treasury or Secretariat is requesting those records from the local church clerk or treasurer. And so if they're auditing your church for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, then you are to submit records for those 3 years in question, minutes, financial records. And usually, the way it's done right now, you can email to the conference those minutes You can print and put them in a package, and someone can take them to the conference. The pastor can take them to the conference, deliver them to the conference, personal delivery. You can put them in the mail and send them to the conference if you do that. Or you can, again, upload them and send them via email. But those are the only two times, or the only time when you are required to send records to the conference office whenever your church is being audited.
Okay. We have about maybe 2 or 3 more. Time is definitely moving, but I just wanted to get in 2 more if we can. There we go. Does the treasurer need a copy of minutes to send to the conference, or do we just allow the clerk to send the minutes to the Treasury Department?
If the treasurer is requesting the minutes from the clerk, it should be for auditing purposes. But also sometimes the clerk wants to know, the treasurer wants to know or wants to be reminded if an item passed, especially when the church treasurer is going to issue a check or a reimbursement for something. Usually treasurers want to double check by looking at the minutes. So yes, the treasurer, and again, remember, the head elder is an officer of the church. Conference clerk, you're an officer of the church. Treasurer, you're an officer of the church. There should be mutual communication, mutual relationship between the three of you, because you are the top 3 officers of the local church. And so communication back and forth, minutes, financial records, etc., should flow between the 3 of you and the pastor, without an issue, with trusting between the 3 of you. So yes, and for auditing purposes, I already explained, sometimes those records are required for auditing purposes.
Thank you, Dr. Ramírez. One more question. We have time for one more. And the question that I'm going to share with you is this. We have a local church clerk that has question, which is, I have a transfer request for a member who does not appear or does not attend my local, does not appear in my church records. How do I handle this? I have a transfer request for a member who does not appear in my church records. How do I handle this?
So I'm assuming that you are the clerk of the church, and one of your, in quotations, or member or attendee from your church wants to transfer out. And so when you're searching for his or her records in your church, you don't find it. If that's the question, I think that's what I understood. There's nothing you can do. This is when you pass this type of matter onto your conference clerk, Mary Ramírez, and she should be able to assist you with that, because now she's going to have to search for that member throughout the entire Texas conference. He or she is not a member of your church, because you could not find him or her on record in your church, but maybe the conference clerk can find that member on record in another church, which you don't have access to their membership. So you just pass on the requests or the matter to the local conference clerk for assistance.
Wow. Dr. Ramírez, thank you for taking the time not only to give a phenomenal presentation, but also for answering all of our questions today. I just want to remind everybody that obviously there's a few more that I could not get to, but feel free to email those questions to questions@txsda.org. questions@txsda.org. I want to again thank you all, Dr. Ramírez, Texas Conference family, for joining our virtual officers training event. You will receive a survey. You're going to receive a survey link to the email you used to register. It is an anonymous survey, and we appreciate your feedback to help us as we prepare for future training events. Again, The recordings will be on the Texas Conference website and YouTube channels within the coming weeks. Enjoy your Sabbath rest. Dr. Ramírez, before we close, will you please pray for us before we go?
Sure can. And before I do that, thank you again, every one of you church clerks, for your ministry. I hope I made it very clear. You are a very important piece of the well-functioning of your church. So that's why thank you, Texas Conference, for this training. And there were a lot of more items or pieces of responsibilities for conference clerks that were left out because the time was short. But I hope you continue to engage, learn, and specialize in this ministry of data, people, and mission that you carry on. So thank you, church clerks, for your very important ministry to the church. Let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you again for allowing us to come together on this Sabbath evening and listen, share, and collectively equip each other to serve you better. Thank you for each church clerk. Thank you for the ministry. Thank you for the important piece that they are to the well-functioning of the local church. And I just pray, Father, you will continue to bless them in their ministry, that you will continue to give them wisdom. And if they need help, to not sit back, but to ask for that assistance, that help that sometimes we all need. And I pray, Father, that your church may continue to grow and grow your kingdom for your honor and glory. So I can thank you for this moment together. In the name of Jesus, we ask and we pray. Amen.